If you are looking for a new graphics card, in this video I will be ranking the best and worst graphics cards from AMD in a tier list. And don't worry, I will make another video for Nvidia. And the fact of the matter is that AMD has some great GPUs and others that are not so great. So you have to be careful with the ones that are not great for the price. And I'm going to be ranking these GPUs in terms of value overall, meaning that I'm not going to put the best performance one in the S tier just because it has the best performance, because there are other GPUs from AMD that you can get for a cheaper price that are better in terms of price performance. I am Valentino, and all the links to my favorite graphics cards from AMD for 1080p, 1440p and 4K resolution will be down below in the video description. With that being said, let's start. So first I want to say that these graphics cards are the ones that are available in the market right now, brand new. I'm not going to include used graphics cards that you can get on eBay, for example, because I want everything to be brand new, and that's why you will not see a graphics card like the RX 6700 or RX 6900 XT, because you can get those in the used market but not really in the brand new market. So with that out of the way, we are going to be ranking first the RX 6600, and right away this one is going to the S tier. Yes, this one is S tier in my opinion, one of the best budget graphics cards that you can get out there, and in my opinion it really doesn't have any competition, because the only competition is the Intel Arc A750, but Intel doesn't have the best drivers optimization yet, and for that reason the 6600 really doesn't have much competition. In my opinion, the best graphics card under $200 by far, and if you're looking for a budget system, you are looking to get this graphics card. Now I recommend you playing at 1080p with this one. You will be achieving 60 to 70 plus FPS on average, even in high demanding titles, high to ultra settings. So very nice graphics card for the price, and that's why it's on the S tier right away. Then we have the RX 6650 XT, which is very similar in terms of price to performance to the 6600. Actually right now it's going for $220, so just $20 more expensive than the 6600, and it's going to give you about 15% faster performance. So it's going into my A tier because usually the price is a bit higher than $220, but if you see that 220, this is S tier, and I would put it above the 6600 if you see it at 220. Since it usually goes for 240 or 230 bucks, then it's going into my A tier. Really good graphics card in terms of price to performance. It is basically the RX 6600 with steroids, so very nice graphics card. You will achieve around 85 plus FPS on average when talking about 1080p high to ultra settings in high demanding titles. We are talking about esports shooters, which are easier to run, then you can expect 200 plus FPS on average, depending on the CPU that you get, because the CPU is actually quite important. This is a Ryzen 5 7600, so very nice CPU if you want to play high FPS games. But yes, the 6650 XT is a very nice graphics card. And then we have the RX 6700 XT, which is going into my S tier right above the RX 6600. Now, as of right now, the 6700 XT is going at the same price as the 6750 XT. For that reason, I will be talking about the 6750 XT and the 6700 XT. If you see it at a lower price than the 6750 XT, then it might be a viable option, and I put it on the S tier because of its price to performance. But since you can get the 6750 XT, which is basically the same graphics card, just a bit faster, then it is the better option. Here with either the 6750 XT or 6700 XT, you get 12 gigs of VRAM, and it's a very capable 1440p resolution graphics card. In my opinion, it's the best price to performance graphics card when it comes to 1440p, especially if you want to spend around $300 and not anything more than that. Then the 6750 XT is an amazing graphics card. You can use it for 1080p resolution as well if you want to get really high frame rates at 1080p, but I would recommend it for 1440p 60 plus FPS on average gaming in high to ultra settings. And of course, it depends on the game that you play, because you will not be getting 60 plus FPS on average in every game. Ultra settings, in my opinion, this is the best price to performance graphics card from AMD by far, and is quite cheap at $300. It's not the cheapest one, of course, but it's also not the most expensive one. Then we have the RX 6800 XT. This one is going into my A tier, one above the 6650 XT. The RX 6800 XT is a great graphics card for 1440p high FPS gaming. You can also use it for 4K 60 plus FPS depending on the game and depending on the settings, and it's going for around $450 at least the last time I checked. If you find it at $450, this is A tier, but if you find it at $500 and you cannot find it at anything below that, then it's going into my F tier because you can get the 7800 XT for the same price, so it wouldn't make sense to get the 6800 XT. But if you see that $450, then it's going into the A tier because of the level of performance that you are going to get with this graphics card at 1440p and even 4K resolution, once again depending on the game and depending on the settings. Then we have the 6800. This is the non-XT version, which is a very fast 1440p graphics card that you can also use for 1080p very high FPS, and this one is also going into the A tier, but it's going one step above the 6800 XT because of its price of performance. It is usually going for $370, so $80 cheaper than the 6800 XT. It's more power efficient, it has 16 gigs of VRAM, and it's slightly slower than the XT version, but it's quite cheaper. So 6800, very good graphics card for 1440p. And I'm not going to talk about the competition Nvidia today because I will make an entire video talking about Nvidia graphics cards, but at this price point it really doesn't have any competition because the only competitor are the RTX 4060 Ti, which has 8 gigs of VRAM, and I wouldn't get that graphics card compared to the 6800. And then you have the RX 7700 XT, which is basically the same graphics card as this one, just newer, but it's a bit more expensive right now, so I would get the 6800. Then we have the RX 7600, and this one is going into my F tier, and the reason why it's going into the F tier is because I just wouldn't recommend buying this graphics card because the 6650 XT basically has the same rasterized performance. It is about $30 to $40 cheaper depending on the deal that you get, and the 7600 doesn't really have any benefits over the 6650 XT. The only benefit that you can see is that you get AV1 encoding, which might be helpful if you want to stream on YouTube, but even the AV1 encoding hasn't been as useful as people were expecting. It's going into my F tier. I just don't recommend it. It has 8 gigs of VRAM, and I really don't like this graphics card if you are going to be spending around $250. Honestly, that price is a bit awkward because for a slightly more you can get much faster performance and you can get more VRAM, which will be helpful at 1440p resolution, and if you spend less money you are going to be getting about the same performance. Then we have the RX 7700 XT, which is basically the 6800, so it's going into my A tier just because they are basically the same graphics card, but I honestly would get the one that is cheaper at the moment. Both basically have the same performance. The 6800 has more VRAM, and the only thing that the 7700 XT has over the 6800 is the AV1 encoding. Other than that, graphics cards are basically the same, so that's why it's right next to the 6800 on my A tier. Then we have the 7800 XT, which is also going to my A tier. This one is going number 1 on the A tier in my opinion because it's going for around $500 USD, and sometimes it goes lower into the $480 mark. For that reason, it's going number 1 into my A tier. I do like this graphics card. It is basically a 6800 XT, but it's more power efficient. It's about the same price, and you get a newer architecture and AV1 encoding. The 6800 XT though might be a better value if you find it at $450. Now the 7900 XT is going into my A tier, but this one as of right now is going one step above the 6650 XT. The reason why it's going one step above it and not really my number 1 in my A tier is because you can get the RTX 4070 Ti Super, which is the competition from Nvidia, and it's only $100 more expensive, and you get the Nvidia feature set, which I do like. So in my opinion, it really doesn't make much sense to get the 7900 XT unless you really want to save those $100, but here you are spending around $700, so $100 more is not really that big of a difference. So unless you really don't care about turning on the upscaler or playing with ray tracing on, then it might be a good value for you, and that's why it's still on the A tier. But I just wouldn't recommend it for the price, because for a very similar price you can get a graphics card that's going to be better overall. And the same goes for the 7900 XTX. compared to the 4080 Super, but this one is going into my V tier, and the reason why is because once again, for around $100 to $150 more, you can get the 4080 Super, has more features, and here you're already spending at least $850 to $900 USD, so you might as well spend $1,000 and get more features from the 4080 Super. By all means, this is a great graphics card and you will be playing at 4K ultra settings, so this is not a bad GPU at all. This is not what I'm saying. All I'm saying is, if you have the money to buy this graphics card, you might as well spend the extra and go with the 4080 Super, which is the better graphics card overall. So let me know what you think about this list. I think it's alright. I put a lot of graphics cards on the A tier, but honestly that's because I do like AMD graphics cards in terms of price to performance. Remember, I'm talking about gaming here. I'm not talking about content creation or productivity work. The only graphics card that I put on the F is the 7600, and honestly it's not even F tier, it's more like E tier, maybe D. I just wouldn't recommend it, but it's also not a terrible graphics card. So it's not like if you get it you are going to be getting 5 FPS in your favorite game. You are going to be getting good performance depending on the game and depending on the resolution and settings, but honestly I just wouldn't recommend it, and that's the only reason why it's so low and the other ones are higher up in the tier list. But anyway, let me know in the comment section the things that you would change, and remember, you have my favorite AMD graphics cards for different resolutions down below in the video description. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed the video, click the like button and subscribe. It goes a long way. You will be helping the channel to grow, and thank you so much if you end up doing that. I will see you on the next one.